And welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to dive into our second segment, a more of an open discussion, quite honestly, because I have my notes on it and I have my feelings around this topic on Mike McCarthy's comments on Micah Parsons. But in reality, I want to know what you guys think about this whole situation. Is it a big deal or not? What Mike McCarthy said about Micah Parsons and not being at OTAs yet after 2 weeks of the OTA period going on. Mike McCarthy, in the first week leading up to the weekend of the first week, mentioned to local media that it wasn't such a big deal. He reiterated the fact that Michael Parsons was in great shape, that he is probably working out on his own, and that he's looking great after that first week. But he did say, or at least inclined to the idea that Michael Parsons, or he expected Michael Parsons to be present for the second week of OTAs, which was this week, and even still now, at the conclusion of this week, Michael Parsons was not there, and it obviously follows the typical protocol of the players needing contracts that would stay away from the voluntary portion of this offseason to avoid any risk of injury and things like that. You see that with CeeDee Lamb just on this team. I think it makes more sense for him just because he is coming to the point where it's cutting it a little bit close with the conclusion of his contract in comparison to Micah Parsons, where he has a bit more time left. I think he has another year plus the fifth-year option on his contract. So they have a bit more time to maneuver with Micah Parsons, but still not showing up to this OTA period. And this is where you might be asking, why is it a big deal then? If it is voluntary, a lot of players do it, so why does this make it any different? Why is this any special of an occasion to sort of bring up here? Well, although Mike McCarthy has said that, like I mentioned before, Micah Parsons is doing his own workout, is doing great physically, the biggest point for me is that with Mike McCarthy and this team, not only is McCarthy on thin ice, if you want to say that, because he is still playing out his last year of his contract. There has been no talks of an extension, so not too much, margin of error there for Mike McCarthy. And on top of that, you have a new defensive coordinator coming in Mike Zimmer, which is where I start to deviate a little bit towards the side that this could be more of a bigger deal, because if you have a new defensive coordinator coming in, if you are the star player for the Dallas Cowboys, again, I know this period is only voluntary, but in saying that, there is a lot, I would assume there is a lot, that this new scheme, that new ideas Mike Zimmer would be bringing in would cause you to, come in a little bit earlier and learn up on that and really be prepared when training camp starts, so everybody, hits the ground running at the same time, rather than, I'm not saying that Micah Parsons probably isn't studying this on his own, but at the same time, you're not really contributing too much and collaborating too much with your other teammates, where on defense there's a lot of communication, there's a lot of signaling, there's a lot of just alignment stuff that I would assume, have to prepare better for it when you're all present working on it at the same time, rather than one person being off on their own and still learning it probably mentally, but I would have to assume it's not the same thing. Obviously, being at practice and learning it with your coach there as well, really tuning out those details that he wants to see out there on the field. That's one thing, and Mike Zimmer has mentioned before that there will be changes to this defense. It's not going to be the same thing that Dan Quinn was running, even though everyone's accustomed to it. He really made it a point of emphasis that the players will have to adjust to his system to really make this whole operation work with him now at the helm. And it's not also on that topic of Micah Parsons not showing up because he is trying to not get hurt, because he has a contract extension coming up in like two off seasons from now. This usually is something reserved, I would say, for a veteran player, an older player, to not get hurt. But Micah Parsons is only 25 years old, and again, injuries happen to anybody, but it is more likely to happen in older players. So I could see why a Cam Hayward, a veteran quarterback, might not show up to the OTAs portions of this, but at the same time, it just puts more of an onus and more of a spotlight on Michael Parsons, I think, because he is looked at as the leader of this team now, and also he is looked at as the leader and learning a new system, plus the whole idea that before there was some discussion where he was pretty much in the media a lot towards the end of last season, commenting on what went wrong with this team. Maybe they have to find other players that fit this locker room a lot better, that really want to win and want to do better in the playoffs. He had some pretty demanding comments to make before the offseason really got into full throttle here. Jerry Jones touched on it. He said he had a conversation with Jerry Jones, and he's always just in the media. So how that gets painted now on Micah Parsons, that he's not there as the leader to sort of be there as an example, lead by example, and learn this new system along with everybody. I think there will be something to say, and it will be something that is talked about for a little bit of time here. But on that, how does Mike McCarthy feel about it? He made some comments on it, starting off the press conference he had to end OTAs, I want to say yesterday or on Wednesday, where he said, it's a long year. Training camp is really the heightened focus for all of that. But yeah, it's definitely an opportunity that's been missed when talking about Micah Parsons' absence from 2 weeks of OTAs. And he also went on to stress that everyone is responsible to be ready and be on the same page somewhat when training camp starts. And sure, everyone can know the plays, the names of it, how it comes through on the headset and how it is delivered to everybody. But again, executing it as one, especially on defense, because on offense, yeah, everybody can know the play, and you could probably learn it on your own a lot better than on defense. That's because I think on defense, I feel like everybody has to be more on a string rather than on offense, where you can learn the play and have the offensive linemen, it's sort of divided into sections. The offensive linemen do their thing, obviously blocking and having all of their assignments. The receivers running their routes, the quarterback getting the signal from the offensive coordinator or the head coach, and also the running backs doing something different as well. That's a bit more divided in how it is executed, and on defense, I feel like everybody has to play off of each other to stay disciplined to their gaps, not over pursuing or just communicating with everybody to make sure everyone's in the right spot. That's another reason why this could become not an issue, but just something to monitor if at some points in the regular season or in training camp you get reports, just sources saying that it just doesn't look right. There is something missing from the Dallas Cowboys defense. Not to say that it directly correlates, but it could lead you to believe that this could potentially have been avoided if everybody was on the same page sooner rather than later. And one of the bigger quotes from Mike McCarthy that'll probably gain more traction and more just media attention is the one where he said, this one that you see on your screen, I'm not doing attendance. We try to have some lightness to it. I'm not going to come up here and talk about one player, especially when there's 98% of the guys here. This one seems a bit more targeted now at Micah Parsons when you say 98% of the guys are here and you don't want to talk about one player not being there when they asked him if Micah Parsons was in the building on Thursday. I know they had a media availability thing going on there where they were taking pictures for something that they were doing with media or social media, and Micah Parsons wasn't on the practice field, but he was in the building on Wednesday or on Thursday, and then they asked Mike McCarthy about it, and he gave this quote that you see on your screen, and 98% of the players here doesn't really help Micah Parsons' case for not being there. Again, voluntary, but if you have basically everybody there, I have this feeling if I was Micah Parsons and everybody was there, and I was one of the two guys that wasn't there, I would feel a little bit bad and a little bit guilty. That's just me. Micah Parsons obviously doesn't want to get hurt. He contributes a lot to this team overall, not just on the defensive side of the ball. So it is logical to him not have to be there. But personally, if I was in his shoes, I would probably feel a little bit guilty because of that. And now you put that whole situation with what Mike McCarthy said and how it could make you feel as a person. It doesn't also help that you have some players being asked about the same sort of topics, specifically Brandon Cooks and offensive lineman Tyler Smith, saying that they're asked about the OTA process and why they value it so much, what's the importance of it, and they now also have quotes saying that they really find this time to be very, important to practice with the team, to get the camaraderie going, get the chemistry going, help teammates learn a new system, help the younger guys get acclimated to the NFL, acclimated to the defense, and how they gel with everybody. Being teachers to the younger guys, especially, is a point that they wanted to emphasize. And also, working on the mental aspect of football, because they obviously can't hit right now, but getting those mental reps in, lining up with everybody, even though you're still in shirts and shorts, getting those mental reps nailed down, rep after rep after rep, can't really be made up when you join in training camp, because everybody, you would have to just know that they have a heads up ahead of you if they're all working together and sort of know how everybody plays off of each other, rather than maybe one guy, Micah Parsons, not being there with everyone and still coming in. He's still going to be a starter. He's still going to contribute a lot, but it's not going to quite be the same, I think, now introducing yourself to all the new guys and getting acclimated to new teammates who you might be playing with a lot more often. You're starting a little bit later than some of these other guys, so they made some good points there in Brandon Cooks and Tyler Smith as well. Is it a bad look on Micah Parsons? I don't think it's that bad of a look, but again, it just makes it more of a headline than I think it needs to be, because you have Mike McCarthy saying these things, and also how active Micah Parsons is in the media. He missed the first week of OTAs because he was off, if you guys paid attention to anything on social media, in Tokyo with CJ Stroud, holding some camps over there. You saw him do some sumo wrestling and stuff like that. That's all fine and good for the first week of OTAs, but then it doesn't, I would assume, it doesn't rub people the right way when this week, now you're back in the country, you're back in Dallas working out like you usually do, and you could be at OTAs. You don't have to. Again, it is voluntary, but you're seen at Mavericks games. You're seen at a couple of games throughout the NBA playoffs, and you can't just stop in and practice one day with your teammates during one day of OTAs maybe. Now I think you just add more attention to yourself. I know it's the Cowboys, so they're always going to be in the news, but I think that's just adding more unnecessary attention to this whole situation, where if you just showed up a day or two and worked out when we're on the field with these guys, I think this could have all easily been avoided. And again, from what I've seen, situation with CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons, you've seen guys already come out and say, oh, CeeDee, we understand why he's staying away. It's good for him. He needs to get his money. You understand it, but I haven't really seen too many guys, one, be asked about Micah Parsons not being there, so that's one thing to preface, but also really going out of their way to say they understand why Micah's doing it. Compared to CeeDee, you kind of get some validation and some guys sort of sticking up for CeeDee Lamb, for a lack of better terms, on his situation rather than Micah, and not too many people saying, oh, we get why Micah's doing it. Nobody's really commenting on that, which I think is something else to make note of as well. Is this going to derail the Cowboys? No, absolutely not. But again, it just adds more attention to the team, where I don't think they need any more attention to be placed on them. Is it a big deal in terms of affecting them in the season? Probably not. But right now, where the news is slow, people want to make headlines of things of maybe not too massive of importance. Yeah, it just creates another storyline where they're going to have to ask Mike McCarthy about it, ask Micah about it, and then his contract. And it all builds up, and you're getting further and further away from focusing on football, which has been the biggest problem for the Dallas Cowboys in recent memory. But, that's what it is. Tell me what you guys think about it. Is it a big deal or not that Micah Parsons hasn't been there for the 2 weeks throughout the duration of OTAs? And could it become a bigger problem with his contract negotiations in the future? But we're going to leave it there and move on with the next break of the show. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Courtland Sutton and his contract negotiations, another player absent from OTAs. What is his status right now looking like, and how much money could he potentially be looking for from the Denver Broncos come a breakthrough in the discussions? I'll give you guys more details on that when we return in just a few seconds. Don't go anywhere.